This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
Celebrity chef and restaurateur John Besh on this edition of Conversations. It's one thing to be recognized as an outstanding chef, but to be considered a culinary superstar in a place like New Orleans, well, that takes it to a whole nother level. Perhaps no other city in America is as closely associated with great food as New Orleans. John Besh has made his mark on the Big Easy and is now sharing the great flavor and character of the Crescent City with the rest of the world. Besh has authored 2 books, My New Orleans, the Cookbook, and My Family Table. In addition to writing, cooking, and running the Besh Restaurant Group, which consists of 9 restaurants, he has brought his Louisiana cooking and lifestyle to television. He is the host of Chef John Besh's New Orleans on PBS. We welcome John Besh to Conversations. Thanks for joining us.
Jeff, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. New Orleans is synonymous with great food. Why is that?
New Orleans is synonymous with food, period, because we have perhaps the only indigenous urban cuisine left in America. And it's because we're geographically and politically isolated for years and years that we haven't felt the encroachment of Americana that's kind of whitewashed so many other American cities and their cultures away. And we recently saw, just with the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, that how easy it would be to fall, to let this culture just drift away if we didn't really stand up and act. And so that's really what prompted me to write the books and to create the show, to get out there and say, you know, this is a valid culture and a very valid cuisine, and just as the music is valid. Yeah. And there's something very unique about it, and I want to see that we perpetuate that.
Speaking of the show, tell us a little bit about the show, because it's Chef John Besh's New Orleans. I mean, you got that New Orleans part in there. If somebody has not seen the show, what are they going to see?
Well, the show's really all about those great foods that I grew up with, and me sharing the food and the stories behind the food, and sharing my view of the culture, that New Orleans culture, which is very endearing, and it means a lot to me. And I think that by producing a show like this, we can I think in an effort, we can see that the next generation understands the stories behind the food, behind the music, behind the people. And it's very interesting. I love cooking. I love storytelling, and I can put them both together on this show.
How old were you when you started cooking?
I was 9 when I started cooking serious. Tell you what happened, Jeff. My father was the great Santini. It's great to be here coming to the Naval Air Station. I drove around earlier this morning. He was a fighter pilot and very driven individual, but also a Renaissance man. He supported the arts and loved cooking, loved the culinary arts. I grew up over there in New Orleans, actually in Slidell. He was hit by a drunk driver while bicycling one day when I was 9 years old. And from that point on, I realized that I could cook for my dad during his convalescence. And just time to time, whenever I had a chance to do so, whether it be shrimp creole or some cockamamie omelet that I'd create, and that would put a smile on his face. Oh, good. Seeing how food can make people happy. And it was something that really attracted me to being a chef. And then through PBS, growing up with Justin Wilson, and then in great chefs of New Orleans, great chefs of New York, great chefs of Chicago and San Francisco, that just drew me in. And then one day when I was, I guess, about 11 years old, I met Paul Prudhomme for the first time, and man, was he bigger than life in every way, shape, and form. And I knew then that I wanted to be just like Chef Paul.
Okay. Was he sort of your role model?
In a lot of ways, he was. He was never my mentor as me working for him as a protege, but I got to know him later after I began entering into this career, and he was always somebody that would give me very sound and solid fatherly advice. Good friends with a number of his good friends, and worked for just this crazy man, my dear mentor, Chris Giorgio, who actually lived one bayou over from Justin Wilson and was best friends with Paul Prudhomme. And so the weekends you would see both of them and La Provence restaurant in Lacombe, Louisiana get together. And I thought, you know, this is what I want to do. I love these guys.
Justin Wilson, he was a bit of a comedian too. Tell us just a little bit about him.
He's just a character. He was just love life, love smiling, love laughing, and love sharing his culture with people through stories. And food was one way that he could tell a story better than just about anybody I know.
Yeah. Professionally, when did you start working in the restaurant business?
You know, I started in high school. Working in local restaurants around Slidell and New Orleans on the North Shore of Lake Pontchartrain. And I want to say I caught the bug early. I knew that I wanted to be a chef. But in the back of my mind, I thought that might be a boring career route. You know, this was before chefs were, you know, looked at as rock stars or anything like they are today. And so I decided to enlist in the Marine Corps. And so I joined the Marines and went off, and I wanted to, you know, just to see the world and do that thing. And I did it, and I had a great time, and I left, I guess in 88, 89, to go to school in New York, and I stayed in the Marine Reserves. And 1990 came along, and the government invited me back into the Marines full time. And so I went to the Gulf War for another year or so, and then came back into cooking, and from that point on, and just my experience with combat, I think, gave me a focus that I'd probably never had before in my life of, I am going to move forward with this, and I'm going to just pursue this culinary career with all vigor and enthusiasm. And so that's what I've been doing, and it's really been a blessing, really, since 92, have just been full steam ahead.
Were you cooking while you were in the Marine Corps?
Oh, no. I didn't even serve a day of mess duty in the Marines. I did whatever I could to get out of it because I knew it would that would cure me of me wanting to be a chef.
Okay. So you get back and you start taking this thing seriously. So at that point, what did you do?
Well, I ended up marrying the girl next door, my best friend's sister.
Okay.
We grew up together, Jennifer Berrigan, and she was my pen pal during the first Gulf War. And this was, you know, we didn't have internet or cell phones at this point, so you had to do things the old-fashioned way. And came back, and within 3 months we were engaged and got married soon thereafter. And then she and I packed up and moved to Europe, and I apprenticed at a 2-star Michelin restaurant resort in the mountains of the Black Forest in Obermunstertal, Germany. And then from there, that led us to another job in the south of France in Bagnols-sur-Cèze. Then we came back to New Orleans, and so we did a quick tour of Europe and then back home to settle down.
From a cooking standpoint, what did you learn most in Europe? What was the most valuable thing
respect.
you took?
From a cooking standpoint, I learned respect for ingredients. That is where I truly met a passionate approach to sourcing and finding the best possible product, and really taking that, respecting that product all the way through the process. I came up in a time, culinarily speaking, in the 80s and 90s when everything was excess and fly it in from around the world. What was local was passé. You wanted something super tremendous, and then you just covered up with all sorts of spices and gimmicks and whatnot. And that's just what it was. It was a gimmick. It was a fad. It was a trend. And what I learned through my apprenticeship was to respect what you have locally. And that's where the idea of becoming a locavore really grew with me. And that was a seed that was planted, and it really brought back to me all these things that I talk about in my book, My New Orleans, because I grew up with this. I grew up as a locavore. You didn't eat crawfish outside of crawfish season. Outside of soft shell crab season, you weren't eating soft shell crabs in the middle of winter.
Right.
oyster season, you eat the oysters when they end at an R, you know,
Yeah.
and so this is how we lived, and this is how my culture was formed, and I'd gotten away from that by becoming enlightened and educated in the culinary arts. And it took that time for me to go back and really focus on respect for the ingredient. Don't cover it up, masking it up with too many flavors and spices and this and that. Let the ingredients speak. Go out and source the best possible things to cook, and then try to manipulate them as little as possible, and chances are they're going to taste great. And that's been my approach throughout the years, and that's been the culinary gospel I've been preaching to my staff over the past 15, 20 years.
What is your favorite personal ingredient? What do you like working with most?
Holy smokes, it depends on what season it is. I think, yeah, I gravitate to whatever, you know, think about it. This time of year, we finally get a cold front, cold per se, and it's cooler and it's drier, and so I start to crave the gumbos and the etouffees and these heavier cast iron pot kind of meals,
Right.
you know. Whereas in the summer, you know, I don't want that at all. Just a great piece of speckled trout thrown on the grill with some lemon and a little butter and some crab meat on top, and I'm in heaven.
Sounds pretty good.
And that's the way I think about food. And so I can't say, if I had to pick a favorite, I would say crab meat on anything is the greatest thing on earth.
You know, I would have a hard time disagreeing with you on that. It is very
Yeah, most
good.
of us down here on the Gulf Coast would.
Speaking of the Gulf Coast seafood, has it been affected because of the oil spill? And I know it has been for a short term, but over a longer period of time, are you concerned about it?
Long term, I'm not worried about the seafood that's making its way to the market. I'll tell you why. We've never had such a food source as highly scrutinized as we have today with our Gulf seafood. We're scrutinizing it when we're catching it. The fishermen can't afford for something to go to market that's just not above board. The docks that are buying the seafood from the fishermen, they're scrutinizing it. You have layers from federal to local agencies that are scrutinizing it. The processors that are scrutinizing it, that buy it from the docks. And so when you look at the layers of stopgaps that we have there of ensuring that you have such high quality food making its way to the marketplace, not concerned with that at all. What I am concerned about are the fishers and the shrimpers and the crabbers. Will they be around by the time we bring this market back, and we have the supply out there, but yet the entire country has kind of turned its back on our coastal communities, just not the Gulf, but East and West Coast as well, and we're just this rampant importation of sub-quality shrimp into the marketplace has driven the price of shrimp down to such, and I say shrimp because that's the main commodity that we're really talking about when we're talking about Gulf seafood, driven the price down so low that that coupled with high diesel prices, there's just no way for the shrimper to make any money any longer.
Well, folks in New Orleans there just have had just a challenging decade. I mean, the oil spill, Katrina. What sense do you get of what the attitude is in New Orleans these days?
I think New Orleans is in better shape than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
I think we now have a populace that's much more civically conscious than ever before. I think everybody that is there, we're all in.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just transferred to New Orleans.
Right.
You live there because you feel called to do it, and
Yeah.
you live there because you want to make New Orleans a better place. We've had a chance. We have had some difficulties in the past, but we've had a great opportunity now to right some wrongs, to rethink urban housing, to rethink public transportation, to rethink public schooling. I think that it's anytime you have a situation like this, you have just rampant opportunity out there to really change. And wipe the slate clean and correct some of our problems from the past. And so when I look at this as a whole and I see our numbers, just economically speaking, we're in better shape now than we were prior to the storm. And that's powerful.
Yeah.
Heck, the Saints won the Super Bowl.
well,
Come on, brother. we're still living high from that one.
Good for you. Good for you. You know, New Orleans is just such a fabulous city, and the people are just so full of character. And I mean, you know, they do take ownership of the city. If a person has never spent any time there, you can't fully appreciate it till you go there and spend some time. But tell me this, how did you, John Besh, transition from being chef to businessman? You have 9 restaurants. How did that come about?
I think I've always, even as a child, I was an entrepreneur, you know, running paper routes, and I had my own yacht maintenance service where I'd run around and do teak work on all the boats around Slidell and all the little marinas and whatnot. And so I've always had a drive to get out there and hustle. I didn't set out to open up 9 restaurants. I wanted to open up one. I thought that would just bring me happiness. And then I saw, well, you know, there's another opportunity to open up the steakhouse in Harrah's Casino. And so I did that. And then one opportunity led to another. And then I look around me a few years, you know, prior to Hurricane Katrina, we just had 2 restaurants. And we've grown a lot since then, reopening in spaces where other national chains and companies left town and abandoned New Orleans. And so we stepped up to the plate, and we took control of a couple of operations and made them our own. And it's been exciting to see, because over the past 10 years, I've had a very dedicated following of chefs and wait staff and, you know, maitre d's to accountants follow me and support me to support my dreams. And now at this point, post Katrina, I've given a percentage to each one of those people that came and really pulled us out and really it brought Restaurant August back to life. Where I have each one of the restaurants that I'm in, I have a chef partner, and I've given a percentage of the restaurant to them, and they've earned it for that matter. And so now I'm doing a lot of investing in my staff, and so I'm helping them achieve their dreams by offering, you know, financial support, marketing support, administrative support, all these different things that a lot of chefs don't want to fool with. Chefs are artists. You know, we like to just go in and perform our art. And so what I've tried to do is build a company that invest in talented, passionate people that all have a degree of a good sense of stewardship about them, where they're members of their community. We don't have a manager on our staff that doesn't sit on a board of a nonprofit in New Orleans. And so we're trying to breed this into the staff so that we can continue to use it as an incubator to grow and better the city as a whole.
In your particular situation, because your brand is so important, so I mean, it's absolute key that you have nothing but quality people.
Right, and people are everything, and everything that we do is because of relationship. You go out to eat, it's a special occasion, you go out to eat because you have a relationship with the place, with the chef or with the maitre d', and it's too important for us. That's our lifeblood.
Now, do you create the recipes for the various restaurants, or are the other chefs involved? Is it a team effort? How does that come about?
It's a team effort. August, primarily, I had always created every dish that went onto the menu. And the others, it's a bit of a collaboration, and because they're partners of mine as well. So we take that into account. And the great thing about me is I've made so many harebrained mistakes throughout the years that I'm the perfect cheat sheet, because I've made nearly every mistake you can make, and I can help the young chefs out with, you know, I love this, but you may want to do that because this is a problem that I've run into in the past. And so we do it by consensus.
Talking about chefs being creative people, and obviously they are, how long, or first of all, how do you come up? What's your inspiration with coming up with something new? And then once you sort of formulate that in your head, how long before it actually hits the menu?
We change menus at most of our restaurants on a daily basis, where it's this constant evolution. You may have the perfect pompano today, but come Monday we can't get it. So what are we going to do? Keep it on the menu? No, we'll change the menu. And so it works as this evolution. And so a lot of times it could be an item that we just think about, and we write it down and actually print it onto the menu. And just before service, we're working out the details of how exactly we're going to carry it out.
So a lot of just ad-libbing and creativity on the fly.
It's a lot like listening to the way jazz music is put together. And if you listen to some great jazz, they'll never replicate the same song twice. It's always just a little bit different, and they'll do something. And ad-lib is part of it. It's part of. I think we like to cook by the seat of our pants and have fun with it. And once we find what works, then it will be replicated that way every time.
You mentioned earlier, I want to follow up on that chefs have sort of become rock stars, and they have. Why?
It's interesting because I think that we are much more food conscious than ever before. Food has become a spectator sport. Food's become a sport.
Yeah.
The food competition circuit's just hilarious, and I participated in it. And in a lot of ways, I was just talking about I have a new book coming out called My Family Table, and it's really a story of how I kind of came to age realizing that, I'm not helping this. What am I doing? What good am I performing by just making food a spectator sport? I want people to get back into the kitchen and actually cook. And a lot of what we actually do on TV, I think, has a huge amount of. And we're creating, now it's just another form of marketing. And so we're reaching audiences that have never thought about food before, which is great. But then Americans are cooking less and less than they've ever cooked before. And that's when I thought to myself, I'm going to stop this. I want to apply myself to my PBS series, which is really smart, and it hits a very smart audience. And nothing allows you to do that in TV other than PBS from what I've found. And I'm going to devote my time to books and more charitable work and a lot less of the competition circuit on TV.
Tell me a little bit of, speaking of the book, My Family Table, you sort of gave us an overview, but once we get into it, what are we going to find?
Well, the premise of this whole thing is I made the mistake once of questioning my wife. When I questioned my wife about what she was feeding the boys, we have 4 children. She says she has 5. I don't know what she's talking about. When I questioned what she was feeding, she turned it on me and said, look, you go to the ends of the earth to find the perfect ingredient for your client or your guest in one of the restaurants. But you haven't applied that to your own home. And it made me realize, just what a sorry little man I am. And so it made me think long and hard about how can I apply 20 years of intense culinary experience and knowledge and take that knowledge that was gained and apply it to the home, to my own home, where if I buy certain things, if I shop right, and if I plan my meals out, I can actually pull off, even with a crazy busy lifestyle, I can pull off several good family meals a night with my family, and that's important.
Give me a couple of hints, a couple of things we should be doing.
All right, Sunday supper. We all like, I think it's just something inherent in our Southern culture. Create the Sunday supper. We do that. If you're heating up the oven anyway, you're tearing apart the kitchen, throw in an extra chicken for later in the week. From that chicken, you can take all that, shred it, and throw it into a Vietnamese chicken salad if you want. Or you can take it, chop it up, toss it with a little bit of red sauce that you'll have in your pantry, because I'm going to tell you how to shop, and then toss that with some pasta, and you've got a great, real quick, impromptu chicken cacciatore. And then you take the chicken carcass after you've removed all the meat and throw that into a pot one night while you're working with little Johnny on his homework, and you bring it to a boil with an onion, carrot, and a stalk of celery, and you've already got this great chicken broth. You can create more meals out of that. And so it's about taking all this knowledge of being very thrifty with whatever you buy, getting the most out of it as efficiently as possible.
When I go to the grocery store, what should I be looking for?
Whatever's local and fresh.
A lot of talk about organic right now.
Organic is
important to
great.
buy organic?
Local is better. If you can find local organic, then you're really on the right path. Supporting local farmers markets. It's just that simple. If we support them, another thing that I learned, a little Katrina lesson that I learned as well, is that if we could resurrect a city by just buying local, we could resurrect a region by just spending our dollars as close to home as possible, creating these smaller economies that can support these larger urban economies. How beautiful is that? If I'm spending $8 million a year just on groceries, what if I did that all in my neck of the woods, in New Orleans and the surrounding environs? And what if every other big restaurant group in the city, and I'm just a small guy, there's restaurant groups that have been around for 100 years. What if we all did that? And think of how that would stabilize not just our foodways, but our culture and our economy at the same time. And if each area did that around the country, we became actually less centralized. We decentralized the way that we purchase to such a degree that we can actually elevate our own economies.
Plus, it's got to be a whole lot healthier for you because it's probably not all processed because it has to be packaged and sent
right.
off.
It just makes perfect sense. It's going back to basics, and that's a lot of what I'm trying to preach in my food, especially.
Getting short on time here, just a couple of minutes. Give everyone sort of an overview. You have 9 restaurants. They're all different types. Give us a rundown.
I've got August, which is that's the flagship, which we use as an incubator for growing young chefs and managers and sending them to the other restaurants. Then we have Besh Steak in Harrah's Casino. We have the National World War II Museum right down the street, where we have the Stage Door Canteen that puts on live shows, and we have like a dinner theater there. We have the American sector, which is our postmodern diner. We have a modern soda shop that's a throwback to the old soda jerk days. Soda fountain and the whole thing complete, along with deli sandwiches and things of that nature. We're just opening Bourne, named after Lake Bourne in southeast Louisiana, which is our coastal Louisiana cuisine, and that's in the Hyatt. Then on St. Charles Avenue we have Luke. It's our German Alsatian brasserie, and then we have Domenica in the Roosevelt Hotel, and across the lake we have La Provence.
Awesome. You're a busy guy.
We
John,
all
thanks
are.
a lot.
Thank you.
John Besh. He has the book, My Family Table, the PBS television show, Chef John Besh's New Orleans. Appreciate him spending some time with us. Appreciate you watching the broadcast. You can catch some of our past episodes online at WSRE.org/conversations. Take very good care of yourself. I'm Jeff Weeks. We'll see you soon.
Support for this program is provided in part by these corporate sponsors. And by viewers like you.